Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're going to do the mimer of Vo'eiro El Ha'avos of Shabbos Parshas Vo'eiro, although this week is Parshas Shmois, because in the subsequent weeks we have three Mevorchim connected with Shevat. Very popularly, it's 40 years from Tafshin Memhei, from 1985. And the good news is that I see that it is popular and there are other shiurim that one could see, so one should choose and learn. But we'll continue our series with Parshas Vo'eiro, which is blessed from this coming Shabbos of Parshas Shmois, and it's read by Mincha in this coming Shabbos. It's also a mimer that covers a lot of the topics that we have discussed in previous Memorim. And additionally, one of our favorite parts, when the mimer comes and tells us explicitly that it's the Kol Echad V'Achas MiYisrael, and it's 40 years from when the Rebbe said it, and the Rebbe gives extra energy and strength, encouragement and power to all of our missions and to whatever it is, our missives in life, and that helps us with overcoming our own trials, to bring about tribulations and to bring about success and overcoming obstacles and overcoming hindrances. This is power that comes to this hashpah, this energy flow of the Rebbe on the highest level from the mimer. So let us begin. Shabbos Parshas Vo'eiro Mevorchim Shevat Tov Memhei. It's leading into the month of Shevat. Vo'eiro El Ha'avos El Yitzchak Ve'el Yaakov. The parsha begins with the verse that says, "And I have appeared to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob." Umevi Bozed Morazokim B'Teirei Reish Parshas Seinu, and the Alter Rebbe brings in his mimer at the beginning of the parsha, Shetevos Vo'eiro Yesh Bo Shnei Pirushim. The word Vo'eiro can be translated and understood in two different ways, two explanations. Echad Lashon Ova Shenizgal El Ha'avos. The word Vo'eiro has what we call in Hebrew grammar a Vav HaHipuch. When the Vav has the vowel kametz under it, it means that it's past tense. If it has a Sheva under it, two dots, two vertical dots, that's future tense. It will come to pass. And when it's with a kametz, or for that matter a patach, that means it changes the tense to past tense. So here it's Vo'eiro, and I appeared. So it's past tense, and it's Gal El Ha'avos, that he appeared to the forefathers, to the patriarchs. Va'beis Loshen Osi Chuhu Loshen Hoive. The second understanding is that it's future tense, but not the regular future tense that will happen in a certain amount of time or when something will come to pass, but it's really present tense, so it's already happening now. And present tense immediately becomes past tense. So therefore there's an understanding that it'll also be for the future. So Vo'eiro, that I am continuously appearing to you, and therefore it has the connotation of future tense because it's something in present tense that is happening. So that's the second connotation that the Alter Rebbe says. That's the best way I could explain it, because really in pure grammar, it's like we said, it's past tense. But it also, if someone to say I'm doing it now, you would also say Vo'eiro, I am appearing, and therefore it's present. That's why the Rebbe says Loshen Osich Hu Loshen Hoive. The Rebbe says it's the future tense, which is already in present tense, and therefore it's a continuum, continuously. Why does this verse, this word of God appearing to A, patriarchs, and B, in the present tense? The Rebbe explains that this is something which is pertinent and connected, something which is owned by everybody, every single human being. Take out the yellow highlighters. Like the Alter Rebbe explains in the subsequent part of the mimer, that the way that the Avos served their avodah is found in each and every individual Israelite. Now we can explain how this works out, The Rebbe in his humility says, it's possible to explain it this way, b'derech hefsher, possibly. And of course, when a Rebbe says something is maybe impossible, by Chassidim it's most definite, concrete. Dehine yodua shelakol hapirushim b'teiva achas yesh kesher. It is known. Now, this is something that Rebbe also quotes from his father too, although it's not here in the references. But this is a Torah, something that the Rebbe's Holy Father taught, and the Rebbe himself taught it. So everything is pertinent and connected. So one of the rules is that if there's two explanations or translations to one word, they're connected intrinsically. So all explanations to an individual word have a connection. We even say this also makes a difference when it comes to halachic ruling. Here the Rebbe says shatnez, for instance, in the laws of shatnez. So here the references that is quoted here is to see the tractate of Nida on page 61b, and that's of course a reference to the Gemara where there's a discussion that if somebody accidentally had a thread, let's say of wool, that got mixed into a linen garment, or it could be vice versa, a thread of linen that got mixed into a woolen garment. There's a discussion in the Gemara if you're allowed to use it, if you're not allowed to use it. If you say that it went out, if it didn't go out, and then the Gemara also comes after this whole discussion there, which you could look it up yourself if you want. But when the discussion comes to a certain case, we say that if it happened before it was made, so since it's only prohibited from the Torah when a garment is made this way, not when it happened accidentally later on, but that is prohibited by rabbinical law. Therefore, there's a discussion there if this could ever be used, if it has to be destroyed, if it could be sold to a non-Jew, or used as a saddle. But we say it can't because ultimately this piece of cloth could be misused by somebody who's doing the prohibition. And then the Torah begins to, the rabbis bring a proof from this word shatnez, which comes from three words, which means smooth and woven and spun and woven. So woven and spun. So Shevat Tovenuz. So Shoy Tovenuz, and therefore. They say that this implies that this would be something only of future tense. So the rabbis say, yeah, but the Torah didn't say those three words. The Torah made one word out of it, one slur, shatnez. So therefore, it's really prohibited, even a rabbinical prohibition, because it's all in one word. So the Rebbe points out here that the wording and all the translations make a difference halachically. That one opinion says no, the whole garment would be forbidden then too, because it would be qualified as shatnez because the Torah says it in one word. So here the Rebbe is bringing this as a juxtaposition on this whole idea of Vo'eiro, that Vo'eiro is connected, that it's the past tense, what happened to the Avos, and that it's a continuum, and it happens to us too. And the Rebbe is going to explain that here. But it's a phenomenal just a little one word here, two words in the Maimer, but if you look at that Gemara, and see what the whole discussion is there, how the Gemara connects that even the rabbinic part of the prohibition of not mixing wool and linen into one garment, even that part goes together with the whole prohibition, because the Torah uses it in one word, even though there's different explanations of what the wording is and how it is. So the Rebbe says it's negei l'halacha. So of course we can dwell on that more, but I just wanted to point it out. Move on. So from this we understand. So therefore the two connections in this word also have the two explanations have a connection. לא רק שכמו שיש עניין Vo'eiro El Ha'avos בפשטוס, כך יש עניין זה בכל אחד ואחד, not just that, just like God appeared to the patriarchs in the simplest form. So we have this idea in each and every individual, and take out the yellow highlighters again, and you'll have to keep it out. But more than that, they're connected to each other. The way God appeared and the fact that he appeared to the patriarchs is connected to how our relationship is with God. We'll move on. Hu al pi maimer azal, and we can understand this according to the dictum of our sages, which says, "Ma'aseh is similar bonim," that an action, something that happened to the patriarchs, is a sign for the children, for their descendants. So the in siman kan can become inyonim, a sign, a symbol, could either be an identifying mark, something that says if it has something we know what it's about, or something that causes it to be that way. So the Indian siman kan can become inyonim ain't technic initial siman with sin shall yodirem abonim echli. It's not just a sign. That the content of the sign is that it would be something to show us that, and through, if somebody has this symbol, somebody has this way of life, then we know that this is how the forefathers had taught us. In other words, the way the forefathers acted is a lesson for us to learn how we should conduct ourselves. No, just what the forefathers did, which is the symbol, the sign, is like the symbol that causes it to be a certain way. In other words, because they did it, we're going to do it also. And therefore, the way we do things, it's a result of how they did it. Not because we should only try to do it, because that's how they did it, so it'll tell us how we should act. That's also true. But the mere fact that they did it makes us also do it. And just like when it was the capturing of the Holy Land, which now it's the time that we have to be especially aware of this. And 40 years ago the Rebbe was talking about this, and it's exactly when it's 40 years when it takes its special effect. How pertinent this idea is. Through the fact that, if you remember, God tells Abraham, "Kumi salach ba'aretz," walk the land, and Abraham walked across the whole Eretz Yisrael, its length and its breadth. Through this, he accomplished the idea of the capturing, the conquering, and the acquiring of the Holy Land. And that's also our task in the world, to make the whole world to be like Eretz Yisrael. Like the dictum of the Tzemach Tzedek, which is well known, that Eretz Yisrael, you have to make here Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael means the Holy Land. Make here should be holy. In other words, not that you have to bring the holiness everywhere in the world, wherever somebody is. This began through our father Abraham. This is what he continues to explain. The Rebbe explains in Torah. Shehem chesed, gvura v'tiferes, dahina avira v'rachmim, yeshnei ba'avoidas, kol echad v'echad b'Yisrael. Again, take out the yellow highlighters. Every single Jew has this troika, this triplicate, that we have Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, which is kindness, severity, and beauty, the first three midas, the first three attributes of the emotional attributes, which is expressed in the characteristics of love, fear, and mercy. And we each have that, and it's in every singular individual Israelite. And the fullest and the best and the utmost way of serving God is in these three characteristics of love, fear, and mercy. And we get this straight. It flows from the patriarchs. And like Menachem says, you could take this to the bank. If the Rebbe says you could say, Zehu gam masher b'chlol saveris Yisrael b'meshach kol haderes yeshnam gimel botim mikdoshes. The Rebbe says that this is, generally speaking, through the generations, there were the three epochs, the three periods, and we served God through the generations. There was the time, there is the time, and the connection, we should say, to three holy temples, to the three Beis HaMikdash. Shem Keneged Gimel HaAvos, the three temples, also correspond to the three forefathers. Beis HaMikdash Rishon Hu Keneged Avraham, the first temple corresponds to Abraham. Therefore it was perfect, it was complete. The first temple, it was built by King Solomon, it was prepared. The preparation for it happened through our King David, his father. This is the idea of the characteristic of kindness. The light, it was luminous. The second temple, 5 things were missing. Most famously, the ark wasn't there. There were other things, four other things. And also, some Jews still remained in exile. They didn't all go up to Eretz Yisrael. That temple, the second temple, Hu Keneged Yitzchak, that corresponds to Isaac HaGvura. That's the characteristic of strength. Tzimtzum, constriction, contraction. So there was something missing in that sense. And like everything that Gvura symbolizes. And the third holy temple, which will be built speedily in our days, Hu Keneged Yaakov, that corresponds to Jacob. The general idea of Jacob is the exodus from Egypt. And what does that mean? The symbol of Mitzrayim, the word Egypt, Mitzrayim, can be read as limitations, Meitzar, Gvulim, boundaries. That is the idea of Jacob, the exodus, Nachlo bli Mitzrayim. It's a heritage without any boundaries, unlimited. The potential for these three parts, these three temples, are from the three patriarchs. What's the reason that there's strength and potential for these three characteristics of kindness, severity, and mercy, corresponding to the first, second, and third temple? That this comes from the patriarchs. They're from the patriarchs, Davka, specifically. Moving up in Mashakosov, we understand this from the verse which is in Joshua, which we actually say at the Seder, in the Haggadah. Be'even hanor Yoshua v'seichem. On the other side of the river is where your forefathers dwelled. As it's explained in Chassidus, elsewhere, what is the explanation that they from the other side of the river? The root, the source of the forefathers is from the level that's referred to as the other side of the river. Shelamai, let me say the Ha'ishtalshalus, which is higher than the chain of creation of the worlds, which just has a tiny segue into the subsequent 3 Mamorim that the Rebbe spoke afterwards, which are connected to the Yud Shvat, the Basi Legani, and the following Mamorim of Arbor Hashonim Mevorchim Yisroi, which are all explanations on the chapter 15 of the continuum of the Maimer of the previous Rebbe that was published for the time when of his passing, the Maimer Basi Legani. In chapter 15, the great explanation is, the Chiddush is this idea, and the Rebbe speaks about it, of the idea that there is tzimtzum even before the first tzimtzum, which is Chassidus grapples with this concept, and later we'll talk about it. But the idea that since everything is unlimited, it's unlimited to the south. In other words, however low the world goes, So the Rebbe speaks about that goes lamata mata indicates the Ein Sof, really the ultimate of God. God is everywhere, even in the lowest, and we have to reveal it there. But it's also northbound. There's tzimtzumim too. So even before the idea that there's going to be a tzimtzum, there had to be a tzimtzum to make a tzimtzum. The decision that there's going to be. So that Chassidus grapples with this continuously on all levels. But here the Rebbe's chiddush is that it's really this idea of tzimtzum is before. And here the Rebbe doesn't really allude to this in quite specifically, but he has the concept here that the forefathers are rooted in higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. How could there be forefathers if there's not a Seder Ishtalshlus? How could there be forefathers if they're not in the chain of creation? They're part of creation. So if they're rooted somewhere which is higher, that's already alluding to the idea that's going to explain later that even higher there are levels. Once there are levels, there have to be tzimtzumim. There has to be a constriction, something which will define and to break down from the essence of God, which is totally unlimited on any level and undefined. So that's just, we see the concept here, but the Rebbe doesn't say it explicitly, but the Rebbe usually has something like we see in all the Mamorim, that there's something that he spoke before. So I wanted to just point it out here. So, Bechinis Torah Dechsheichem, to this level that's higher than the chain of creation, is the idea of the columns of darkness, Shehem Amidas Shebekeser, which Kabbalistically are referred to the attributes of the crown. And now this verse of that your forefathers lived on the other side of the river, there was only Abraham. Yitzchak didn't live there. He was only in Eretz Yisrael, in the Holy Land. Jacob didn't live there. He actually went there, but it's a reference to Abraham where he started out. So even though the verse is said about Avram, but this whole idea also passed through and was drawn down through all the forefathers, and just similarly to the way it is in serving God, that Avram symbolizes the service of love. Love is the source of the other services too. The idea of the severity, and which is the fear, and the mercy. Like the Zohar says, there's no service like the service of love. And the primary part of the service is the idea of love. Even though fear is higher and fear is lower, but the primary thing is the expression of love. And now that Rebbe will talk about this the idea too in a few other ways. And since the source of the forefathers is so supernal and so high, therefore what they did and what they experienced is the symbol and what gives the strength to their offspring, to their descendants. That also the service of their descendants and offspring should also be in complete and replete with these three characteristics of kindness, severity, mercy, love, fear, and pity, in other words, beauty. This is the strength and the energy that was given with what the forefathers did. That's why it says, God says, I appeared, and that it also is not only what happened in the past, but it's also future tense, starting in present tense. It's not just future, meaning it's future because it's present tense and continuously happening. Keep out those yellow highlighters. This strength is given, this power is given to each and every individual Israelite, as an inheritance and a heritage from the forefathers. So here the Rebbe is giving us this power to accomplish and to do and to serve like the forefathers. So this idea, even more so, in a more general sense, that the forefathers are the three characteristics of kindness, severity, and beauty. They are the symbol and what gives us the strength, not just for serving God with these three characteristics of love, fear, and mercy. But the general idea of how we serve God, that's the generally everything that we do and serve for godliness. When the children of Israel are in exile, the time of exile is a time of concealment. Everything is hidden. Like the Alter Rebbe says there in the Maimer, the exile is compared to the gestation period of a fetus, pregnancy. Hainu the kshem sheibur hine gufo adam hu b'shlemusei v'at shekvar niglu sham gam side of a tzipornov. Just like during pregnancy, the body of the human being, of the fetus, in other words, is complete to the extent that in utero the child has hair and fingernails. Hainu shagufu b'shlemusei. It's a complete body. Uba'even shal dai v'hoiser, in a way that it's even totally complete and even extra. This is also a reference to the Gemara in Yevamos. There's a discussion that says a child could be, according to some, there's a discussion there that the child could be overdue, up to 3 months overdue, let's say. That's one opinion of the Gemara there. Actually, opinion, I believe, of Rav. So that's a long time. And today the doctors, no. They say we're going to induce, right? We don't allow this to happen. I think the most is up to about 10 months. But anyway, even the Gemara there has a little bit of a canceling of that idea. And this discussion, they don't say it's impossible because the great Rabbi who said it, they said the majority of the rabbis don't agree with that. So for that alone. But anyway, the idea that a baby is complete in uterus is the nuance that the Rebbe is bringing out here, which the Rebbe is going to say that therefore a Jew in Golus is already complete, how it is in the Geula. The only thing that's missing is the actual Geula itself. So let's see what the Rebbe says here. The child is full, he has fingernails, has hair, but you can't see the child. Child is hidden, child is concealed. It's not revealed. It is concealed. It's within this pregnancy, in this gestation. This is the way it is in exile, simply speaking. It's time that godliness is hidden and concealed. The ultimate, the fulfillment, the way it will be when it's complete and done, is the birth and the revelation. That's the redemption which is to come in the future. That's the birth. The and as Tanya says, beginning of chapter in chapter 37, that what happens when the redemption comes is commensurate and dependent on the way we serve God now and what we do throughout the time of the exile. The days and the era and the epoch of Mashiach is the ultimate goal and the complete fulfillment of creation of the world, of this world. It was created in the first place for the Messianic era, like it says in Tanya chapter 36. Now the world is already complete before Mashiach comes, right when it was created, to the extent that like the verse says, these are the contents of the heaven and the earth when they're created. And when it says the contents, it really means the offspring. It's the word toldus. Toldus, moli. It means that the word toldus, we've learned this in the past, is written with 2 vavs. It doesn't have to have 2 vavs, but it's written to illustrate that the world had everything complete in it when it was created. There's another place in Torah where toldus is also written with 2 vavs. And therefore the Rebbe says that the way the world was complete when it was created is not to be compared to the fulfillment of the world that'll be in the days of Mashiach. Because referring to the days of Mashiach, so then Ela told us Peretz. There it says, also told us with a Vav, these are the offspring of Peretz. Peretz was the great-grandfather, in other words, of King David, the son of Judah, Peretz. So in the book of Ruth, when it speaks about the lineage of David, it says this is the offspring of Peretz, who was the son of Judah. Told us, there it says the word told us, it's also with two vavs. So Mailazu, that represents the ultimate way the world will be when Mashiach comes. And this advantage of how the world will be is accomplished by our deeds and our service to God through this time. The world on its own, even though God, when He created it, and it says in Genesis, and God saw everything that He made, behold, it was good. That's in chapter 1, Genesis, verse 31. And the Rebbe says, V'yeser al kain, even more, v'hinitev me'ed. It says, it says not only that it was good, but it was very good. Mikol mokem teiv zeh shebe'elam, but the good in the world, the way it is now, is hidden. It's concealed, meaning godliness is not seen. The goal, the task, the job of the person is in this world is to reveal the good which is in it, and not only the good, but the very good which is in it, and that's a reference to God and godliness, etc. Like it says in the teachings of the Arizal, in the book of Yitzchayim in the beginning, Huva Le'il, the Rebbe spoke about this also a week and a half earlier when it was the fast of the 10th of Tevis in his talk. The Tachlis B'riya Sa'elam Hoyse Legala Shleimus Kecheisav Yisbarach. The ultimate purpose of creation was to reveal the complete potential of God. May He be blessed. Now, this is also a little bit of the idea that's going to be discussed more at length in the Bosi Leganim Amorim, in a certain sense, which we're not going to get into right here. Pirush, the Rebbe says, what does that mean? Even though God's ability are already complete, and this is this idea of going into if God is already unlimited, where does the tzimtzum have to come in? If these things are already within His essence, but then you need to have the decision that there's going to be creation, and somewhere along those ways there have to be this idea of tzimtzumim, changing of the status quo, etc. Excuse me. The enke chaser peil and potential is ultimately actual, because if something has it there potentially, the only thing it's missing is that it should get done. But if it once it could get done, so ultimately the ability proves that it is that it not only is it done, but that even though it hasn't been done yet, but it's all one thing. So enke chosapel is a concept which is Kabbalistically shows and illustrates the idea of ability is already the full part of what it is. Just now it has to be brought and accomplished. But once it's there, it's all part of one thing. But so if that's the case in creation, so then what part do we have in it? So therefore the Rebbe says that the purpose of creation is should be in a revealed sense, shouldn't only be potential. And we reveal the utmost of God's ability. This intent is accomplished through the service of the children of Israel here in the world. And that's the whole idea. God is hidden, and through a Jew performing mitzvahs, studying Torah, that brings out these abilities of God. The power to do this was given to the forefathers. Vo'eiro El Ha'avos gamer, and God appeared to Abraham, etc. Take out the yellow highlighters. And through them, it's drawn down to every single individual Israelite. So what does this mean in dollars and cents? What does this mean in how we serve God? The two first commandments in the 10 Commandments of I am your God, and there should not be any God besides you. That is the general content of the whole Torah. Why? The first commandment of I am Lord your God, that includes all of the positive commandments. And that you should not have any other God, but that includes all negative commandments, all the things you're not allowed to do. So generally speaking, both of these two commandments correspond to each other. One is that I am Lord your God, the acceptance, the learning, the knowledge of God. The second one is not negating any other type of deity, heaven forbid, and anything else that's not godly, that God doesn't want. So it's really one thing. They both are the idea, to accept upon ourselves God's dominion, God's kingdom. How do we do this? How does this come down in our performance of mitzvahs? Through serving God with love. It comes from the love. And like we say in the Shema, which is the most important fundamental part of the prayer and of a Jew's life. After we say, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is the one and only, which is the way we express and the first mitzvah of I am the Lord your God. To say Shema is a mitzvah in and of itself. But when we do that mitzvah, we're also harping on and touching on another mitzvah, because we are accepting that God is the only God. And that furthers our belief and love and strengthens our knowledge of God when we say the Shema. So this idea, Ksiv, what is immediately following that? And you shall love your God. That's like the first portion of the Shema. Inyan Avas Hashem, the idea of loving God. And generally speaking, this comes through the 3 paragraphs of the Shema. The first paragraph of the Shema is accepting the yoke of heaven, of the God and of the kingdom of heaven through the love of God. This is the level of our father Abraham, the idea of love. Abraham, who the prophet calls him Abraham, my lover, the one who he symbolized love. He loved God, like we said earlier. Afterwards comes the second portion of the Shema, second paragraph of the reading of the Shema, and it shall come to pass if you hearken and listen and obey. That's the idea of accepting the yoke of the commandments. That corresponds to Isaac, the idea of the severity. And then comes the third paragraph, the third portion of Shema, that is Parshas Yitzias Mitzrayim, the paragraph of the Exodus from Egypt. That's the idea of the redemption. That corresponds to Jacob, as mentioned earlier. That is the characteristic of mercy, beauty. Since the reading of the Shema is the foundation of the way we serve God. Because once we accept God like that, then we can do everything else. It's the foundation of everything else. Move on. So we can understand now that the service of the forefathers, which Shema corresponds to the way they serve God, love, fear, the mercy, beauty, we understand how this is not only just a symbol, but it also gives the strength for the general mitzvah performance and serving of God of their offspring, their descendants, their children. And now the Rebbe continues, that the Rebbe continues in the Maimer in Torah Er. What is the rest of the verse that we began the Maimer, that the Rebbe began the Maimer with? It says that I appeared to the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Right there, it says that he says, Ushmi Havaya Leine Daiti Lehem. Even though I appeared to them, but I didn't let them know the greatness and the significance of my name, Havaya. So we appeared with Elikim, other things they did know the greatness of, but they didn't reach that level. This level, now, because it's simply understood, it says many times the name of God's name, when it says that he appeared to the forefathers, but it says with the utmost of their understanding and significance that he didn't do. The Rebbe will explain it over here. The whole idea of the way the forefathers served God, that was with character, with the emotional attributes, with these characteristics. But then more than that and higher than that is the way to serve God as a servant, as a slave. Like it's explained to Torah. Now here, this is a concept that Chassidus talks about. You think, what's greater? Somebody who loves, because they express their love so much. They're so enthusiastic about you. They're so excited about the other one. So they love the person, right? And then there's the servant who's totally submissive. And the servant is then so much closer because he's totally just part of the master. So in this sense, the servant is even deeper connected than the one who loves. The Rebbe will explain that here. So when it's love, so then the person is themselves. They have their makeup and what they are, and they are excited with you. So then they are accepting of you. But there's yeshus involved. They're not totally submissive because it's their existence. They are the one who's loving you. So there's a lot to be said about that. That's great. That's wonderful because their whole developed self is now loving something else, someone else. That's an important attribute just in general. And then it says, but the servant, on the other hand, is completely submissive to the master, completely subservient, completely nullified. To the extent that a simple servant is then the most subservient. Like it's explained at length by the Rebbe Rashab Nishmaseiden in the continuum of discourses of 56-66, that Davke Bechinas Evet Poshut Magil Etzem Adam, that specifically this idea of a simple slave, he can now reach the essence of the master. So the one who loves, who then understands, goes to the extent of how much he could understand, or how much he could feel, or how much he could express. The servant hits the essence because he ties his shoe. He does what he needs to do. He cleans his day. It's just his existence is he's hitting the master in his essence of whatever the master needs, without all the details, just in the most simplistic fashion. To explain this even more detailed, when God says to Moses, and my name, my four-lettered name, my name Havaya, I didn't let them know to the forefathers. Rashi explains that it means I didn't let myself be known to them. They were in the attribute of my truth. My true attribute, the most significant part. And then what does God tell Moses? Therefore go now and tell Israel, I am Havaya, I am the Lord. So to the forefathers, he didn't explain it. He didn't let him see this, but now he says, but now it's come the time. Moses, go tell them about Havaya. Now it's going to be this revelation. So, then it was the revelation of the truth of this, and this attribute of the truth of God's name. This includes the whole idea of the truth of what the world really is made up of, what's the purpose of creation, and especially according to the way we understand it in its deepest sense, in the innermost, in the way Chassidus explains. Like the Alter Rebbe explains at length in that Maimer and the subsequent discourses, the whole new novelay of Moshe Rabbeinu was that at his time he revealed the attribute of the truth and the fullness, the completeness of the ultimate part of the name of God. What is that? That's a great revelation. So the Rebbe says, it's such a high revelation, not even to be compared to the revelation that was to the forefathers. The ultimately, what did Moshe do? When was the great revelation? At the giving of the Torah at Sinai. The reason for this is because the forefathers, their whole idea was the attributes and serving God with them, which is very important. Moshe's level was wisdom and intellect, in other words, and submission. And like Moshe Rabbeinu said when they were complaining, he says, "What are we?" When he says, "What are we?" it means it's undefined. Who are we? There's God. Shahaya b'vchinas eved. Moshe was the idea of a servant. It says Moshe was the servant of God. And therefore he merited that through him there was the giving of the Torah. The Torah, its source and its root is from the level of the intellect, which is higher than the emotions and higher than the attributes. The Torah comes from higher. And that was Moshe's idea. The idea of emotions is with a great storm and a great hubbub and a great commotion, with a lot of noise. The Rebbe uses this. It's a Russian Yiddish term that the Rebbe said. It's written here in the Maimer. So the word shturim the Rebbe used a lot. It means with the whole storm. And here he uses this word yarn, which is not only a commotion, but a hubbub, with a big fuss, with a big to do. And it's used when people made a big deal about something. So this is the whole idea of attributes and emotions. It's expression. It has its dynamic, etc. But intellect is simple and quiet, with submission and subservience. It's without the whole hubbub. Bechinas menucha, the idea of rest and peace. And this is also one of the things that the sages say, that according to all opinions, the Torah was given on Shabbos. Shabbos is the idea of rest. Like it says that when Shabbos comes, rest comes. That's the idea of Torah. Therefore, through the submission and subservience of Moshe, we got to flow through and came down the idea of Torah, Emer Livnei Yisrael and Havaya, and therefore it was at that time where God made this revelation and tell the children of Israel that I am Havaya. I am God, this four-lettered name. That was a greater revelation than the revelation that was in the days of the forefathers, of the patriarchs. So just like the difference between the way the forefathers served God and the way Moshe served, Shabbos obviously that the forefathers' service was the attributes. Moshe's service was intellect. That's also a little bit now the difference between the way things are now during the exile and the way the revelation will be when Mashiach comes in the future. Now the main serving of God is with the attributes. Like it says in Tanya, we're going to learn it soon in the daily portion of Tanya, that in chapter 14, that the primary service that a person has is like the Beinoni has to serve, which is hard work, which is with the emotions. This is the idea of working with the attributes to hone them, etc. Love of God in its branches, and the fear of God in the branches that come off of it, the things that are related to it. But the service of God with intellect, that's the service of tzaddikim, which is few and far in between. Beinoni, everyone could have, right? A Beinoni struggles, but a Beinoni just doesn't do what the evil inclination tries to chide him to do and get him to do. But nevertheless, there's the struggle. The tzaddikim have the different thing. But when Mashiach comes, we're all going to be on that type of level. So, ultimately, there is intellect that's connected to the attributes, right? It's with intellect that you're able to rule over the attributes. The mind rules the heart. But that's a specific and say a specialized way of intellect and contemplation that is for the purpose of honing and improving the attributes and controlling them. But not what's called the intellect of greatness, meaning the intellect for the sake of intellect alone and serving with the intellect. That's a different level. But in the future to come, Mashiach comes, we will have also the refinement through intellectual capacity. As it's explained at length by the Mendel Rebbe, the discourse beginning with the words, do not chide and do not anguish the Moabites. Al totzas me'ev, this that these time, and now this means this actually in quite simple sense. We have the land of the 7 nations, but this also means we have the 7 nations that we have to conquer within ourselves, whatever they represent. So when during the time of Golus, there can only be the conquering of the land of the 7 nations alone. That's because the primary way to serve God is with the 7 attributes. But the other 3 lands, which go all the way to the Euphrates River, the land of Keni, Knizi, and Kadmoni, which were prophesied about, and and they are also promised to Abraham at the covenant between the slabs, between the pieces of the animal. The bris ben absorim, that's only going to come when Mashiach comes. The Keni, Knizi, Kadmoni, Huinin, Gimel, Asfiris, Chabad, Chokma, B'Dadas. These 3 lands, Keni, Knizi, and Kadmoni, is the idea of the 3 intellectual attributes of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. That's how it works in the soul of the person. The properties of the soul of the person also comes from these spheres. from the supernal spheres. Then when Mashiach comes, we'll also have the refinement that we refine the world with intellect. And then this ultimate capacity of refinement will also affect how the midas will affect the refining of the attributes also. That's why it's explained in Tanya that we already had a little bit of how Mashiach how we're going to have the revelation when Mashiach comes, when God gave the Torah. That's when people heard God speaking. People saw what was to be heard and heard what was to be seen. It was the greatest revelation ever up until now. And this was a bit, a taste of how it will be when Mashiach comes. And ki b'shas Torah. Because at the giving of the Torah, the whole idea was that the Torah was given to us to become part of our day-to-day life. That's the idea of the intellectual part. That the Torah is intellect, to study with the intellect, which is to affect the attributes. But we already had to get it with a piece of what the ultimate is to come through what we're doing to bring about Mashiach comes. And therefore, it's like the revelation of the intellectual capacity of the future to come. And now the Rebbe explains in the final thing here that the reason that the revelation of I am God, this idea of the truth of what Havaya is, and the idea of the giving of the Torah had to come specifically following the exodus from Egypt. So it's explained in those Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe, etc. Such revelation could only come after the preparation and the requisite before what is the descension into the exile. Because specifically through having first this descension of concealment and hiding, then you can come Vo'eiro El Ha'avos to being elevated into the supernal ascension. Hagili the Matan Torah, the revelation of the giving of the Torah. This we can understand also the way we serve God in general. How does that work? The soul descends to the lower realms, to this world, and it is in exile. It's a descension from a high peak to the lowest pit, so to speak, to the deepest place. Kimvur b'Tanya, as it's like it explains in Tanya, again, chapter 37. Therefore, by the way, every soul has its own personal redemption. That's during prayer. Prayer, we're focused on God, and we're a little bit out of the nitty-gritty of what comes in the world of exile. As Alter Rebbe explains in the Holy Letter. Now, within Golus itself is even a greater descension. Golus, exile within exile, meaning that when the soul comes down here, even in the time when the temple was standing, it was in a certain sense in exile because it wasn't in God in its source. But now, when it comes down to this world, it's in exile within exile because everyone is in exile. So it's exile within exile. But the purpose of this exile is in order to come to the revelation of the future to come when Mashiach will come. And therefore, if that's the case, then there's an advantage of the way we serve God during the exile with the attributes, the emotional attributes. That's what the forefathers did. So the forefathers have something over Moses too. Because it takes that to bring about the redemption. So through the serving God in exile, we come to the revelation of when Mashiach comes in the future. Kivon shezeh hasiba v'zeh hamesubov. This is the cause, and that's the effect. Muvon shehasiba hi l'mayla min hamesubov. Then the cause is higher than the effect. The cause is deeper. So if the cause is what's going to bring about the effect, that means serving God with the attributes, the emotional attributes, then the effect is great, but the cause is greater. Like we know, there's a Talmudic principle too, and it's explained in Chassidus at length, that something which causes something else to happen is greater than what is affected. This is what the verse means, that I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the name God I didn't let them know. Therefore go tell the Jewish people that I am God. Through our serving God with our actions and our deeds and our service throughout the time of the exile. Serving God with the attributes. The level of the forefathers. With this we come to the revelation in the future to come. Emerald B'nai Yisrael and the Avaya. Tell the children of Israel, I am God. B'frat means also Mashiach will come. B'frat atal achrish, especially now after the Torah was given. The Yeshnik Kvar Gamin Yinamechin, we already have the idea of the intellect and the first part of that. The limit of Torah b'shleimus, Torah study in its utmost and its fulfillment. U'be'efen shalimud meibel d'maisa, and that the learning brings to action. The kiyim kol mitzvahs, in fulfilling all the mitzvahs. Shekol alusam heim gimel amudim shalem elameimet. That the general idea of the mitzvahs is the three pillars that upon which the world stands: Torah study and serving God and benevolence. Shekineged Gimel Hamidas, again, is another thing which correspond to the three midas, the three attributes of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, kindness, severity, and beauty. When we take out the Torah, we say this verse: right? We say this, and we also say it in the morning, every day in the prayer. It's from Chronicles. So it says, Gdula, that's a reference to Chesed. Gvura is Gvura. Tiferes, so it says a beauty, and the Chazal, our sages tell us that Tiferes, there's a reference, the beauty is the reference to the giving of the Torah. What goes after that in that verse? So we come to the fulfillment of the subsequent part of the verse. That which is uplifted and supernal and high, for that's first and foremost at the head. What is that? It comes to the fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah. The glory of God will be revealed, and every flesh all together will be able to see that it's the mouth, my mouth, the mouth of God speaking. Made of Yameinu Mamash, nowadays actually so. So here we had some of the fundamental ideas that Rebbe brings it into this parsha and gives us this idea that what we're doing is going to bring the Geula. May it come immediately and speedily in our days. Wow, it's so crying.